Are we using the Mevo? Is the most important thing? Are we using the Mevo camera and this microphone? Yeah. Are we live though?
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Thanks. Again, been relying on Mckibben for his skill in setting up this session. Hi everyone, welcome back. It's the 4 o'clock Path to Enlightenment class here in Europe for the peaceful land of joy in our magnificent Tibetan traditional temple set in an equally magnificent 10-acre flower garden. So hopefully you'll be able to come and visit soon as lockdown eases. We start off with praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. The prayers on page 19. So giving voice to our aspiration for enlightenment and so on, and deepening our connection to the lineage, the path of enlightenment lineage, and to Shakyamuni Buddha and to our Guru and so on. Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Dewa Jepa Jiten Jimpa, Jabu Jue Tabu Joa, Lana Mepa Lada Minati Tumpa, Sanje Chandende, Tajoa Shatya Tupala Jatsalo, Chara Jatsa Chiwo.
Teacher, Bhagawan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly pure and complete Buddha, all-knowing, having poise, Sugata, apprehender of the world, navigator of beings to be subdued, incomparable, teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha, the Bhagawan, the glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, we prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge.
Sagadana Sati Dhanava Tachabadadani Tatsuchi
To the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. To the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. This ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, adorned with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered thus, may all beings enjoy such pure lands. I prostrate my 3 doors with a mind of respect, and offer all actually arranged and mentally emanated offerings. I reveal all the downfalls and negativities that I've ever collected, and rejoice in the virtues of individuals and superiors. Please remain perfectly abiding until samsara is no longer seen. I request you to turn the vast and profound wheels of Dharma. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. Body born from 1,000,000 magnificent excellent virtues, speech fulfilling the hopes of infinite beings, a mind that sees all objects of knowledge precisely, I bow my head to the chief among the Shakyas, supreme sons of the incomparable teacher, carrying the load of all the conqueror's deeds, by their emanations appearing in countless realms, I prostrate to Maitreya and Manjushri. The mother of conquerors is difficult to fathom. The precise thought is in commentaries written by Jambavipa's ornaments, Nagarjuna and Asanga. I prostrate at the feet of those most renowned in the three realms. From these two great chariots come the excellent lineages of the paths of profound view and vast deeds. Their essential points gathered thoroughly and without fault. Prostration to the lamp holding this treasury of instruction. Giving explanation through compassion, by seeing precisely and completely the essential points of all paths of Sutra and Tantra. Holder of the conqueror's entire holy Dharma. Prostrations to the glorious Losandrapa. I've seen all the infinite teachings, supreme way of crossing for those entering the journey to liberation. Moved by compassion to deeds skilled in method. Prostrations to the spiritual masters who make everything clear. The kind master is the basis of all qualities, and proper reliance is the root of the path. By seeing this excellence and through much striving, bestow blessings to be devoted with great respect. This gentle support of freedom, obtained this one time, is most difficult to achieve. Knowing its great value gives rise to a mind seizing its essence constantly day and night. Bestow blessings to generate this continuum unceasingly. It is like a bubble in water, this constantly moving body and life. Thus remember the swift collapse of death. Beyond death, like body and shadow, white and black karmic results follow after. By gaining firm certainty in this, the mass of faults, subtle and very subtle, are abandoned, and the accomplishment of all virtuous collections completed. Bestow blessings to ever attain conscientiousness. The qualities of samsara are unfit to be trusted, the door to all suffering. Do not be content with these enjoyments. By knowing its defects, bestow blessings to develop a great aspiration for the bliss of liberation. By that pure thought, great conscientiousness is drawn forth, and mindfulness and awareness of the individual liberation, the root of the teachings. Bestow blessings to make this the essential practice. Just as I myself have fallen into samsara's ocean, all living beings as mother are also like that. By seeing the responsibility for the liberation of beings, bestow blessings to be trained in supreme bodhicitta. However, by merely generating the mind, if not acquainted with the three aspects of ethics, enlightenment will not be attained. By seeing this excellence, bestow blessings to train with strong effort in the vows of the conqueror's sons. Pacifying distraction toward perverse objects, by way of proper analysis of the perfect meaning, bestow blessings to swiftly and continuously generate the path related to the union of calm abiding and special insight. Thus, becoming a vessel trained in the common paths, enter the Vajrayana, supreme evolution of all vehicles. Bestow blessings to engage the easy path itself, that sacred way of crossing for fortunate beings. The base of practice for the two aspects of attainment is when guarding the pure vows of commitment is found to be genuine and certain. Bestow blessings to protect them even at risk of life. And by understanding properly the important points, which are the essence of the two stages of the Tantra classes, bestow blessings to practice according to these holy teachings, for continuous effort in the supreme four-session yoga. Like that, may the spiritual friend revealing the gentle path and the friends of proper practice stand firm. Bestow blessings to quickly pacify the masses of outer and inner hindrances. In all rebirths might ever be parted from perfect gurus and the enjoyment of the glorious Dharma. By utterly completing all qualities, paths and grounds, may I quickly achieve the state of Vajradhara. So as usual, we'll start off with a brief meditation, and we can forget about anything we've read, any headlines, preoccupations, such as President Trump is ahead in the polls, or Vice President Biden's ahead in the polls, or Sean Connery's passed away, and all our sort of more mundane preoccupations. We're determined to let go of all this and focus on the Dharma for this next hour or so. So settling on the breath and releasing any worries, any tension, any sickness, releasing it with the out-breath. And it feels good to let it all go. And that Path to Enlightenment prayer we just read talked of the swift collapse of death. So even James Bond is faced with the swift collapse of death this week. And we ourselves and our family and everyone, all living beings, are faced with that swift collapse of death. So we need to recognize what we've got now. Our leisure and fortune, our freedoms and endowments that most other living beings don't have. So if you watch wildlife documentaries, I saw one last week with the melting ice and young penguins trying to get to the sea, and then leopard seals are waiting under the broken ice as they flounder, and they eat them before they even make it to the sea for the first time. And then when they got to the sea, there was killer whales, and it was very difficult to evade those. Or in Melbourne, if you drive on the Westgate Freeway or the Ring Road, you see so many trucks of cows and sheep. peering through the rails. They've been taken from their contented life in a field to face this swift collapse of death in an abattoir. So this is samsara. For many other living beings. So we should recognize right now that we've received from this extraordinary lineage, from the Buddha, down through so many extraordinary masters, accomplished, realized beings, holy beings, who've received this path to enlightenment from Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden, this extraordinary text. And we've received these teachings on renunciation, on bodhicitta, and on the nature of reality. So not many living beings are exposed, have access to those three things. It's extraordinary. The key to enlightenment, and the key to freedom from all suffering. Once you've received teachings on bodhicitta and emptiness, then nothing else comes near. Nothing else really stands up in the light of those two incomparable teachings from the Buddha. So we can take the three values from this perfect human rebirth. We can extract temporary value, and at any moment we can turn our agitated mind towards bodhicitta or towards emptiness and create the causes of enlightenment. That's a value in every instant. In any instant we can do that. We can create the temporary value of a good rebirth through relying on the Dharma, modifying our actions if we want. And if we want, we can take ultimate value from this birth of leisure and fortune and seek definite goodness, freedom from samsara, divine liberation, or complete enlightenment. How many living beings have that choice? Not so many. So because of the immense suffering in samsara, for example, the penguins I mentioned, or the sheep and cows on the ring road, the suffering of all living beings, rebirth after rebirth, we develop the conviction we must realize our Tathagata essence. We must come in contact with the natural purity of mind and attain enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings without exception. And stabilize the mind on bodhicitta. Okay, we can end the meditation, and we're back to special insight on page 837 of the Path to Enlightenment. So we're looking at the teachings on the nature of reality. And we're on the section on the principle to be refuted. So Geshe explains there's many types of ignorance within samsara, and I think in the book it says all are arising from this self-grasping ignorance. So certainly all our afflictions are arising from this self-grasping ignorance. Whether ignorance about, for example, not knowing how to cook something, a particular ingredient, that I don't think that is necessarily arising from it, but all our afflictions, all our destructive emotions, all our upsets, all problems arise from this self-grasping ignorance, and it's the cause of samsara. So it's the cause of delusions, great desire, grasping, dissatisfaction, and anger, upset, resentment, and so on, and then acting those out and creating negative karma, experiencing suffering, and poor rebirths, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's interesting that they don't teach it at a school, as it's such a central thing. You think it'd be useful to know about this through the school education, but certainly the school I went to, they tried teaching us Latin, but we never heard about self-grasping ignorance. So that was a bit of a shame. So self is a confusing term because, self is a confusing term because normally we associate self with I or me, a person. But in this case, Self-grasping ignorance is talking about holding something as being self-existent, as in it exists from its own side, from its own self, from within its own self. It's established by itself and sustained by itself. So that's what self is being talked about here. So it means it's inherently existent. We're grasping that inherently existent things coming from their own side, self-established, self-sustaining. And if something was self-existent, according to the consequence school, it would be independently existent. It's the opposite of dependent arising. Self-existent, existing from its own side. So not depending on causes, not depending on paths, not depending on conditions, and not depending on designation or labeling or imputation. So from the viewpoint of the Buddha and Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, the consequence school in particular, this is a non-existent. This self-existence doesn't exist. So self-grasping ignorance is it's essential that we recognize it, otherwise we can't negate it. We can't overcome it if we don't recognize it. And it's difficult to identify self-grasping ignorance within your own mind because it's all we've ever known. We've seen everything as appearing to exist from its own side. It's been naturally established from its own side, out there, jumping towards us, sort of thing. And for example, if you asked an earthworm about the sky, the earthworm's never seen the sky. It's always been obscured by the earth and wouldn't have a clue that such a thing could exist, that you could not have the obscuration of the earth in the way. Or a young rabbit that's never been out of the burrow. And you ask, again, it has no concept of this sort of vast open space of the sky, and actually may regard it as being quite scary, quite threatening, because the first time it's out, its whole world has been transformed. It's no longer got the obscuration of the earth, and it can see. So maybe in some sense, we're a bit like that with our self-grasping ignorance. We've never stepped out of this framework or this sort of prism of viewing the world, and so it's pretty hard to imagine what it is. We take it for granted, and it's hard to pinpoint what is this self-grasping ignorance. So Prince Harry this week, he talked about his unconscious bias that he said took many years with regards to race. He was saying he had an unconscious bias he was unaware of, and with regards to people of different colour skin, or with regards to race. And so that's a real learning, isn't it? When you discover you've got an unconscious bias, something you've never seen. So we might learn from our family. People might grow up in a family where there's a natural bias in one direction or the other direction, or towards certain groups of people, and you just take it as granted that's a normal attitude until that unconscious bias is sort of illuminated by someone who doesn't have it. And then you might start to look at your own mind and see, gee, actually I do have this, there's other ways of looking at reality and looking at others. And so that's what we're trying to get to in this section with regards to our self-grasping ignorance that pervades our perception of everything. So Other synonyms Geshe gives for self-grasping is self-existence, inherent existence, independent existence, existence from its own side, and existence by way of its own nature. So all the synonyms, they start to give a bit of a hint at how we're viewing things. And I'll mention there's a few others as well that Geshe doesn't mention the path to enlightenment. So Geshe does mention true existence, inherent existence, existence from the side of the object, objective existence, existence by way of the object's own character, ultimate existence, existence from within the basis of designation, existence as its own reality, existence as its own mode of subsistence, existence by way of its own entity. So, yeah, you can sort of think about the synonyms and get to sort of start to get a bit of a feel about what in the world is being talked about with inherent existence or true existence, self-grasping. So it's talking about things being established and holding their own entity, establishing their own entity, holding their own entity, sustaining their own entity without input from mind or input from other things. So, yeah, so things just appear there. Everything we see, you just say, oh yeah, that's a cushion. It jumps out at you as a cushion. There's no sort of awareness of its dependent arising and its momentary impermanence and its emptiness of own-sidedness. So, yeah, that's one distinctive thing about self-existence is there's no input from mind required to establish it or to sustain it. And that's how things appear. But if we analyze how things exist, then it's very different from the way our innate ignorance, our innate self-grasping ignorance assumes things to exist. So analysis, reason and analysis is a very useful tool to start to pull apart our perception of the world and how it establishes our own samsara. So the path to enlightenment now talks about the two divisions of self-grasping, and these two divisions are really divided for meditation's sake, because it's the same imaginary characteristic of self or inherent existence, where it's imputed on both phenomena and persons. The two divisions are self-grasping at phenomena and self-grasping at persons. So self-grasping at phenomena, Geshe describes it as consciousness grasping at any phenomena apart from persons as being inherently existent. Any phenomena that can establish and hold its own entity. So examples, you could take anything as an example. But for example, if you ask someone, was 2019 a good year? Then it appears in their mind, they weigh it up and something, this year, 2019, this entity appears in their mind and say, oh no, it was a bit rough. You know, the year was a bit rough, or the year was, it was a fantastic year. It was a fantastic year. And the year appears established from its own side, 2019. But if we look, actually, in any moment, to try and find that. We can't find that 2019. And the same, for example, if you find a banknote, $50 note, or as a kid, you might have found a $5 note or a $10 note in the gutter, and it just jumps out at you. Gee, there's $10, and you quickly look around and grab it real quick. It's like the value's just jumping up towards you, and it appears to be established from the side of the object down in the gutter. So again, when we see $10 and our eyes light up, there's no sense that the value's been designated as convention, that the actual note doesn't hold value. That $10 value is not actually within that note. It's a designation. So, So I want to quote, there's a really nice quote from Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand from Bonka Rinpoche with regards to this. He explains it very clearly. He says, when you go for a gallop on a horse, you do not mean the horse's body and mind when you say horse. Horse is merely a name imputed on the set of both of them. You apprehend the horse to be a self-evident thing, covered by the term horse. Something self-evident and quite independent of anything else presents itself to you. Yeah, so that's a nice clear explanation of how it presents itself to you. It jumps towards you, this entity. With regards to the other type of self-grasping of persons, Geshe describes that as consciousness grasping persons as being inherently existent, and independent of the five aggregates. So that ignorance exaggerates the degree of you can call it, if you want to be highfalutin, ontological status, the degree of reality or the substantiality of I and me and myself. And actually we spend all our lives reinforcing this I, this me, this self, and taking it for granted. So that's why it's so extraordinary that we've received these emptiness teachings. I received some from another a great Lama. He went on to become the Abbot of Sarah, and he said he was giving emptiness teachings. And he said to the class, as soon as you've heard these teachings, they're actually special in that you've got the key to samsara in your grasp, and that's a very extraordinary thing. So we should recognize and respect that we've actually received emptiness teachings from Geshe and from this extraordinary text, Path to Enlightenment, and so on. So this self-grasping of persons is the root of our problems. Every problem, every miserable moment we've had in life, every upset, every gnawing away, and whatever, depression or resentment or all our worry and so on and so on and so on, coming from this self-grasping of I, this exaggeration of the I that's being affected, the I that's being hurt, and the I that's not getting what it wants, and so on and so on and so on. So we spend our entire lifetime serving a fake. We're enslaved, as Shantideva said. We're like a slave to a falsity, and it just continuously gives us suffering, our servitude. So it'd be quite interesting for us to get a sense of what is this self-grasping? What is it we're actually doing? So self-grasping of persons, it's a tricky one because it fluctuates. So it's hard to see how we're grasping at I when we're relaxed and maybe just lying on the beach listening to the waves, for example, and everything's okay. This holding I is inherently existent. It doesn't jump up so strongly. It doesn't appear so defined. So it arises when we're in emotional states. So it arises when we've got great desire or grasping or upset. We've been accused of something, or we feel we've been wronged or been hurt. Someone said something that's really gone to the heart, and you've hurt me, you know. Or we see it very clearly. I don't know, when I was a schoolboy, the standard thing, we would go to the river, rowing on the river, and you'd pretend to push your friends into the river, and they'd pretend to push you, and you get a real jolt, and the I just jumps. I've almost fallen into the river, and that entity I is very clear, grasping of I. So, it arises when we're in an emotional state. So it tends to also fluctuate because sometimes it appears fused to our body and mind or our five aggregates. So, you know, a guy goes into a pub and another guy gives him a bit of a bump on the shoulder. It's not you've pushed my shoulder, you've pushed the shoulder. It's you've pushed me. You know, the I jumps up, the I has to assert itself. So there's a confusion about what's actually been pushed. So it's fused. At that point, the I seems fused with the shoulder. You pushed me. Or if you're embarrassed, a feeling of embarrassment, then I'm embarrassed. So again, it's fused with that feeling of embarrassment. All right, if you're feeling really happy, I'm so happy. So the I is fused with the aggregate of feeling at that point. Or if you understand something, you say, I understand that. So your I is fused with your analytical wisdom. You know, I'm a Buddhist. Your I is fused with a belief, you know, a consciousness that says I'm Buddhist or likes Buddhism. So, but at other times the I appears as being separate from body and mind. So it can appear, this is my body, this is my mind, I'm the owner, I'm behind all this, I'm the controller. So again, it's hard to nail down this self-grasping ignorance because it moves around. The concept of I, according to Prasangika, we don't actually analyze our innate ignorance when we're self-grasping. We don't analyze how something exists. It just jumps out at us. And it's the same with the I. So we don't naturally think, is I the body? Is I the mind? Is I this feeling? Is it separate? It just jumps out. And so it actually moves around sometimes. Sometimes it's separate and behind and the owner and the possessor. Sometimes it's described like it's the head salesman and your parts, your body and mind, are the team of salespeople. And so it's a hard one to perceive. And also another thing, we can see it's not analytical because you feel I'm the same person as I was when I was 6 years old. But actually, every cell in your body is different. Your body is totally different. Every cell's changed. Your mind's totally different because you might feel I'm the same as when I was 2 years old. But look what you know now. and how you behave now compared to when you were 2. So it's it's like the I in that vision is like a frozen. It doesn't matter. It's the same I, even though when I was 3, I had this sort of youthful body, and then when I'm 90, looking back, it's the same I. So it's like frozen. It's like a permanent thing in that regard, almost independent of body and mind. So we naturally don't analyze. And the I appears as being self-sufficient, substantially established, independently existent. And as I said before, it's the cause of psychic existence. It's the cause of it's the cause of taking oneself too seriously, over-dualistic view of me and other, dividing the world into me and other, and I'm the hub of everything throughout my life, and others as sort of inherently separate. And from that, things that support I, things that I find pleasant, and being designated, people being designated as friends, things that we find unpleasant, designating those people as enemies, getting angry, getting desire, creating samsara, all from this fiction, according to the Buddha. So it's an pretty extraordinary thing. So on page 838, then Geshe talks about the method for refuting self-grasping ignorance. And he describes it as the wisdom perceiving emptiness of inherently existent persons and phenomena is what refutes inherent existence. It's what refutes substantial existence, self-sufficient existence, existing from its own side, seeing the emptiness of those qualities. It overcomes the fiction, and we get to start to see reality. That's the plan. So with the wisdom perceiving emptiness, you see, you don't try and adopt a view that things are empty. You look intently for the inherently existent I or the inherently existent thing. And you look everywhere, and when it's absolutely exhausted, there's nowhere else to look, and you then realize there's just an absence of that thing. And with good concentration, it becomes like an incontrovertible knowledge of the emptiness or the absence of that fiction. And that is what is said to be transformative. So, and transformative, it eliminates all our delusions. It eliminates all our upset. And it stops the wheel of the 12 links and so on, the interdependent origination. Stops them in their tracks. So, So with that realization of emptiness, then it's said to be illusion-like. We realize things are dependent arising. We gain an experience of the illusory post-meditative equipoise, or illusion-like post-meditative equipoise. And we see we're more like an actor in a dream, rather than this deadly serious I in this incredibly concrete world that's full of suffering. So, change your perspective on our world. So you can imagine, maybe try and imagine an electron's view or neutrinos. Apparently neutrinos are these tiny, tiny I think there might be massless particles that travel continuously from space right through the Earth. There's thousands going through you every second of these particles. So we feel we're so solid, but from this viewpoint of this particle, we're completely transparent, because in actuality, there's a massive amount of space within each atom in our body. And so even in terms of physics, it's possible to take a radically different perspective on the solidity of our world. Everything we take as so solid and so real from the viewpoint of subatomic particles like neutrinos. That's not the case. It's completely wrong. So it'd be something like that. If we realize emptiness, we gain a radically different view and a far more useful view in accord with reality and in accord with establishing happiness. So at that point, realizing emptiness, we eliminate psychic existence forever, and is said to be the only exit from psychic existence. You have to get down to negating the most subtle misconception, which is of inherent existence, of true existence, to actually stop the wheel of samsara. So it's the key to overcoming the endless lifetimes of suffering we've experienced, and everyone in samsara experiences. So we should be very excited, even though we find emptiness difficult. We should, shouldn't we? We've just been told we've got the key to overcome countless lifetimes of unhappiness. And if we explore it, if we're prepared to use this life to explore it, so it's a pretty exciting, it's challenging, but an exciting proposition. So then Geshe on page 839 talks about the causes of realizing emptiness, he says, well, if ignorance is the root of samsara, and realizing emptiness overcomes samsara and all its suffering, then why not just focus on emptiness? What have we been wasting our time for, ploughing through this path of enlightenment year after year after year? Why don't we just go to the emptiness teachings? And Geshe explains that emptiness is very subtle and very profound. Even trying to get to this self-grasping ignorance, know how we're grasping at reality, is challenging to see it clearly. So our minds are obstructed, they're inflexible, they don't concentrate very well, and so through the path to enlightenment, we train the mind in becoming more supple and able to access the sort of subtle subjects of emptiness and so on. And then Geshe describes Dharma as having two divisions here. So karma abiding and special insight are one, and those are teachings that explicitly teach emptiness, and they're the direct opponent to psychic existence. And the rest of the path to enlightenment is said to implicitly teach emptiness, in that it prepares the mind for the realization of karma abiding, the union of karma abiding special insight. So as we mentioned last week, Lord Tsongkhapa asked Manjushri the best way to realize emptiness. And Manjushri said those three things, that we need to see our guru and deity, make prayers to our guru and deity as being non-dual. So we make requests, and we need to purify the mind, and we need to accumulate merit. So, so the three scopes of the path to enlightenment, to simplify, because I'm I'm a gardener. The three scopes are like in the garden. You need to be motivated to go out and garden. You know, you've got to get off the sofa, turn off the TV, and go out in the garden. You've got to be motivated. Then you've got to weed the garden, and then you've got to cultivate the soil. And at that point, you can really develop a beautiful flower garden. So similarly, the path to enlightenment, it teaches us motivation. The path of small scope. When we look at the various suffering, we look at the death and sufferings of the lower realms, and we look at medium scope. So we look at the Four Noble Truths and the cause of suffering, the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering. These are all highly motivating things for developing renunciation of samsara, seeing there's something better. So on top of that, we then pull out the weeds with purifying the mind, stabilizing the mind, identifying our delusions, applying opponents to our delusions, practicing four opponent powers and so on, seven-limb prayer, and we accumulate merit. So we practice the, in particular, things like Guru Yoga and the six perfections, bodhicitta, to accumulate merit. So then we've got this internal garden that's ripe for the realization of emptiness and the realization of our enlightened qualities, our dormant or potential enlightened qualities. So I don't know if that made sense, but anyway, to a gardener it does. I'll quote on page 840. Geshe here, he quotes Chandrakirti. He says in his Engaging in the Middle Way, just as a person with sight easily leads all groups of blind men to the places they wish, so this wisdom mind guides those whose eye is damaged to Buddhahood, causing them to gain all qualities. So the path to enlightenment from Guru Yoga to come abiding is like the body, it's like a strong body that holds this eye of wisdom that actually gives the sight. And we need the eye of wisdom to find the city of enlightenment. We need our wisdom to illuminate our minds from within and show us how things are. Yeah. Then I'll read from page 840. I'll just read a section that Geshe talks about here. He says, because emptiness is such a deep and profound subject, you must be prepared to be patient in approaching the understanding of it. On first reading, you may not be able to fully grasp this subject, but the effort applied to gaining even a preliminary intellectual understanding will help to purify the mind of the obstructions to recognizing the nature of reality. At the same time, the continued practice of all the meditations contained in the three scopes of the path to enlightenment will serve to further refine and purify your mind and empower it with sufficient merit to be able to penetrate more deeply the meaning of emptiness. For that reason, it is said that practicing the entire path to enlightenment is the best means to quickly gain the realization of emptiness. So it's easy to just practice Vajrayana and emptiness, and easy to neglect our meditating on karma or meditating on death and so on suffering. But we need to do that. We need to keep anchored in reality. It keeps us motivated, keeps us on the path. And with emptiness, it's quite easy to veer away from emptiness in our practice. I think a lot of Buddhists veer away, or they don't naturally gravitate towards the emptiness teachings. Some feel it's a bit cold or a vacuum-like, as if it's negating, it's negating them, or it's reducing who they are, and so on. So we need to reflect on suffering and the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering in particular, how our ignorance actually creates the suffering. And also, I suppose, reflect on the enlightened qualities of the Buddhas, and reflect on the qualities of people like Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to see that emptiness is actually extraordinarily life-enhancing. To realize emptiness is life-enhancing. So I think in the Tibetan scriptures they talk about how rabbit coming out of the burrow, it fears the sky is going to fall on the rabbit's head. In the same way, we might have fear of emptiness on the rabbit's head. In the same way, we might have fear of emptiness. You don't find emptiness by looking for emptiness. Emptiness by looking for the inherently existent thing, and the emptiness is the negation of that. It's the realization it doesn't exist. This is analysis that's looking to find inherent existence. It's looking to find existence from its own side. It's looking to see how something does exist. What's its mode of existence? What's its ontological status, and so on. And when the object is unfindable, at that point we need to be aware of, for example, when Geshe led meditations on emptiness, you'd look for the eye, you'd look within your mind, within your body, not there, can't find it, absolute, nothing there. And at that point, he would then, when you meditate on emptiness, he'd say, so how does the I exist? We know it exists because you experience things. It exists as a dependent arising, mere designation. So, So when the object disappears with ultimate analysis, it's not nihilism, because ultimate analysis is only qualified to find ultimate existence. Ultimate analysis doesn't find conventional existence. So the negation or the emptiness is an emptiness of ultimate existence, or objective existence, independent existence. And then when we realize emptiness afterwards, we easily, according to the path of enlightenment, at that point, it's easy to understand dependent arising. We can try and understand dependent arising first, and that leads us to emptiness, or we can try and realize emptiness, and that leads us to dependent arising. So after an emptiness meditation, for someone who's directly perceived emptiness, there's said to be this illusory-like post-meditative equipoise, where it's like you've realised in a dream you're dreaming, and everything's illusory, like you realise it's just a world of appearances. You're no longer trapped in the dream. So I'll read a quote from Geshe. This was from 1995. He said, the Das Bhumi Sutra says, meditative equipoise on the 10 grounds, practicing the perfection of wisdom, then meditating on emptiness of the 5 aggregates, from the form to the aggregate of consciousness. At that time, the Bodhisattva only perceives ultimate truth at that time. They don't perceive the conventional truth of the aggregate of form or the aggregate of feeling and so on. And it's like the 10 Garudas, because there's 10 bhumis, 10 bodhisattva levels, like the 10 Garudas fly into space, but they never leave footprints. Nobody is seen. This one is the example. In the same way, with meditative equipoise on the 10 grounds, the 10 bodhisattva grounds, perceiving emptiness of persons and perceiving emptiness of phenomena, at that time, you only perceive ultimate truth. At that time, you never perceive conventional truth of persons or phenomena. So like these Garudas, these mythical birds fly into space, they don't leave any tracks. There's nothing to sort of grasp onto. There's just space. And so the Bodhisattvas meditating on emptiness, at that time, there's no appearance of conventional truth. There's just a pristine awareness of emptiness. So just see how we're going for time. Okay, so then on page 841, Geshe talks about the two divisions of emptiness. Sorry, I'm skipping around a bit here. And the two divisions of emptiness, both self-grasping ignorance and emptiness have the two divisions of persons and phenomena. So the two divisions of emptiness are with regards to the base of emptiness, persons and phenomena. So everything is emptiness, empty of inherent existence, but it's useful to divide it between persons and all other phenomena just for meditation purposes. It's the same emptiness. And emptiness of persons doesn't mean that there's no person. So if you see the emptiness of your mother, it's a big relief. Your mother still exists, she's still there, she'll still do your washing, and you can still ring her up when you're upset, even though you perceived her emptiness. You perceived her emptiness. And your whole family's still there. You can still go around at Christmas time and stay for a few days and have a fight with the family, even though everyone's empty of inherent existence. So the emptiness of persons, no independently existent person. Existent depends on parts, on causes, on conditions, and on designation. And that the person is not any one part. There's not one atom of Tim within Tim. There's not one atom of Margaret within Margaret. There's not one atom of Mckibben within Mckibben. There's parts of Tim within Tim, but there's no Timness in those parts. So there's no findable atom of anything within itself. So we can see when we're grasping at self-existent, for example, someone has a role such as a doctor. And many doctors, interestingly, during COVID, have not had much work to do because people haven't been going to clinics. So if a doctor has no patients, then there's no doctoring. So how can you be a doctor if you're not doctoring? So you can see the emptiness of, you think, oh, that person's a doctor. And you can see the emptiness of a doctor because it's a dependent arising. It depends on that activity of doctoring or caring for patients. So Geshe now talks about the order of ignorance and how first we're self-grasping. What comes first? Do we grasp after the person? Well, the I first, or other persons first, or do we grasp after phenomena? And according to, I think Chandrakirti explained that, but according to a path to enlightenment, first of all we grasp after persons. After phenomena. So when you see someone walking towards you in the distance, you see their shape and colour. The eye consciousness sees the shape and colour, and there's a grasping at that shape and colour. And then you say, oh, that's Mark, or oh, that's Heather. So then there's a grasping a person. But first something triggers that. So it might be hearing someone's footprints, or you hear someone drive in and you say, oh, that's Rosie, he's just driven in. You grasp a phenomena, and from there you grasp a person. So that's the order of ignorance. And the order of realization is the opposite, according to Path to Enlightenment and Chandrakirti and so on. In that first we realize the emptiness of persons, then we realize the emptiness of phenomena. But the explanation for that is that realizing the emptiness of phenomena, what's been talked about is realizing the emptiness of the five aggregates. So if you just realize the emptiness of a mirage, you haven't actually qualified as realized the emptiness of phenomena in this case. So, and also it said realize the emptiness of the I is a bit easier, because even though it's a personal thing, with the way we grasp at I seems even more fictitious than the way we grasp at other things. So often with the I, you get a sense of the I's right there in the middle of your chest. Or the I possesses my body and possesses my mind. It's my body, my mind. It's like a very strange construct. Whereas with a house, for example, you don't feel the house is there in the middle of the house. You don't feel the house owns the doors and it possesses the windows and so on. So the grasping that I can be a bit more gross in that sense. I might read a quote from Geshe, although I'm running a bit late there. From Geshe are always really good. So this was an oral teaching. He said, if you perceive the emptiness, you perceive the emptiness of phenomena. But if you perceive the emptiness of colour and shape, you don't perceive the emptiness of phenomena. In this case, the emptiness of phenomena means the emptiness of the base of imputation, the five aggregates. So when we impute a person on ourselves or others, we impute on the five aggregates. And Geshe says, but true grasping first arises grasping of phenomena, then graspings of persons. Grasping of phenomena is the cause of the result, grasping of personality. The conception of phenomena first arises, then the conception of persons. Emptiness of phenomena is more difficult to understand than the emptiness of persons. It's the same emptiness, but a different basis. Why is emptiness of persons first perceived? It is more easy, because this phenomena means our aggregates. Our aggregates are the basis of imputation, and persons are the imputed phenomena. The aggregate form is the supporter. That is a subtle subject. That's Manjushri talking to Lord Tsongkhapa. For example, someone understands the emptiness of colour and shape. Does that person perceive the emptiness of phenomena? No, it doesn't follow. What is defined as the emptiness of phenomena? When a person perceives the emptiness of the base of imputation of five aggregates. So Aryadeva, in his 400 verses, he said, that which is a viewer of one thing is explained to be the viewer of all. That which is the emptiness of one is the emptiness of all. So the good news is, if we realize the emptiness of one thing, then within that we can easily understand the emptiness of other things. So within that understanding of emptiness, where you can see this, the same applies to other things and realize the emptiness of other things very easily. So we shouldn't feel too challenged. We've just got to realize the emptiness of one thing, and then this becomes very easy. That's actually a mark of that we've actually negated inherent existence. If it's transferable to other things, then it's a good indication we're on the right track, that we're negating the right thing. Yeah. So maybe similar, if you see, first time you see someone dying, or as a child you see someone becoming sick or dying, then it sort of dawns on you that everyone's going to die, that you might think about it. And that's quite a realization. It's never occurred to you that that's the case. So seeing that apply to one person, then it just naturally, you can understand it applies to others, same reason. So like that with emptiness. So then we've got the, I'll probably wrap up here. It's quite a lot of material. It's good to reread this and think about it while we're focusing on it these next few weeks. And next week we'll be up to page 843 and looking at the 7 examples of emptiness. So we can get into emptiness through the side of dependent arising. We can get at emptiness through the side of ultimate analysis, pulling things apart and trying to find them and not being able to find them. And we can get at emptiness through examples. So worldly examples are easier to grasp, like mirages and dreams. And they point to the more subtle understanding of how everything is illusory like that. So we'll look at the 7 examples. I think next week there's no path to enlightenment because there's the virtual festival, is that correct? Yeah. So it will be the week after that. We've only got about 3 more weeks, I think, 3 more teaching weeks till the end of the year. So we've got to get through the special insight chapter and make the most of our chance to look at emptiness. So we'll finish off with the prayers. Okay. On page 31, by the 2 collections vast as space, amassed with effort for a long time, may I become a chief of conquerors, a guide for all beings whose mind's eye is blinded by ignorance. Also in all lives while not yet come to that, may Manjushri favour me with his compassion, finding the supreme path, complete with all stages of the teachings. May I please the conquerors by practicing well, by my precise understanding of the essential points of the path, with skillful means drawn along by strong compassion, and by dispelling the mental darkness of beings. May I uphold the conqueror's teaching for a long time, where the supreme precious teaching has not spread, also where it has spread but become degenerate, with a mind deeply moved by great compassion. May I make clear this treasure of benefit and bliss. The stages of the path, excellently established by the marvelous deeds of the conquerors and their sons, give glory to the minds of those aspiring for liberation. May the conquerors' deeds be long preserved. May all humans and non-humans who remove the obstructions and establish conditions favourable to cultivating the excellent path never be parted for all of their lifetimes from the purest of paths which the Buddhists have praised. When someone makes effort to practice properly the 10 points of conduct of the Supreme Vehicle, may he always be assisted by the mighty protectors, and may oceans of good fortune spread out reaching all. On page 34.
Itagi Pinanta Divaya Tuzante Shikti Shitantiti Sipahamana Mahudutpada Manto Tancho Zipidubu Te tu miseratun Buddha, te chotolo jidan midrash, ne chomatatsen yadaktavan, rini nanjido patatinjo. Whatever white virtues we have thus created, we dedicate as causes, enabling us to uphold the holy Dharma of scripture and realization, and to fulfill without exception the prayers and deeds of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three times. By the power of this merit, in all our lives, may we never be parted from the four wheels of the Mahayana, and may we complete the journey on the paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, pure view, in the two stages. By this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of wisdom and merit, and attain the two holy bodies arisen from wisdom and merit. May the precious superior mind of enlightenment be generated in those who have not yet generated it, and not decrease in those who have developed it, but increase continuously. So, Geshe, one time when he was teaching emptiness, he mentioned that there was more purification just within that hour if we were thinking about emptiness compared to doing 1,000,000 Manjushri mantras without thinking about emptiness. So we need to think about it. And we had some good news yesterday. We had lots of the odds came back for gardening. So yeah, it was marvellous. We had the two Margarets and Heather and Chris and Christine and some other people came out to help us here. So it was fantastic to see everyone here. So hopefully opening up will continue and everyone will be able to come back to the temple. So thank you, everyone. Ciao. Do you see what the messages are?
Need to speak it. Speak up. Okay. Everything good?
Yeah. Thanks, Manny.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the microphone works on this, my work computer,
All right.
but doesn't work on that. So maybe we'll update the guide.
But it was no microphones worked on that, was it? None of the microphones were working. So that's weird.
Maybe I'll try updating the.
Yeah, you could update the sound driver.
Sounds. Pick that up.
Yeah, well, you just go down and put in the service tag. You can go down and put in the service tag and it will give you all the drivers. Yeah, it was weird, right? I'm sure it was, yeah. I never had that really. Is the camera off now?
Oh, that's fun.
So,
Andy,
okay.
you see this? This looks very good.
I'll end the session. There's no questions, is there?
Yeah.